People who can't ask for help aren't weak. They're wounded. They learned early that needing anything was dangerous, shameful, or pointless. So now they carry the weight of everyone, except themselves. Every person who struggles to ask for help carries a story that began long before adulthood. It usually starts in a house where the child learned, slowly and painfully, that needing things was unsafe. They weren't born independent. They weren't born strong. They were shaped that way by years of experiences that taught their nervous system one core message. Your needs make you a problem. A child's brain is not logical. It's survival-based. So when emotional needs go unmet, the child doesn't think, my parent is overwhelmed, or my parent doesn't know how to comfort me. Instead, the child thinks, something is wrong with me for needing anything at all. And that belief, once ingrained, becomes one of the hardest psychological wounds to heal. Some children grow up in homes where emotions were not allowed. Maybe they were told to stop crying before their tears even hit the ground. Maybe every time they tried to express pain, they heard things like, "Why are you acting like this? You're too sensitive. Don't make a big deal out of nothing. Handle it yourself." To a child, these words don't just sting, they rewire the brain. They turn needs into shame, vulnerability into danger, and asking for comfort into something that feels like a crime. Over time, the child adapts. They train themselves to become self-sufficient long before they should. They wipe their own tears, regulate their own fear, and silence their own voice. They learn to be low maintenance, not because they are, but because life taught them that being anything else brings trouble. Other children grow up in homes where the parents are emotionally unpredictable, sometimes warm, sometimes cold, sometimes explosive. In these environments, the child learns not to reach out because they can't predict what version of their caregiver they're going to get. One day they might be held. The next day they might be blamed, ignored, or yelled at. This inconsistency plants a deep fear. If I ask for help, I might get hurt. It's safer to stay quiet. It's safer to handle everything alone. And then there are the children who grow up being the responsible one, even when they are far too young. Maybe they had a sick parent, or a parent struggling with mental illness, or addiction, or financial instability. These children become the emotional anchor of the household. They learn to be the listener, the helper, the fixer. Their own needs get buried under the weight of everyone else's problems. They internalize a role that feels like a burden. I'm the strong one. I don't get to fall apart. In psychology, this is called parentification, when the child becomes the caretaker. And a parentified child learns very early that asking for help is a luxury they do not have. They don't say, "I'm scared," or "I need someone," because they believe their role is to hold everything together. This turns into adulthood where they still carry the same mindset. I don't need help. I'll figure it out. I always do. But deep down, they are tired. Tired in a way most people will never understand. Some children grow up in homes where their attempts to ask for help were not only ignored, but punished. They learned that showing vulnerability resulted in anger, mockery, or emotional withdrawal. When they cried, they were met with irritation. When they needed comfort, they were left alone in their room. When they reached out, the door, literally or emotionally, was shut on them. The brain interprets this as danger. Asking for help becomes tied to fear. To avoid that fear, the child learns to shut down emotionally, to handle everything internally, to never show a crack. If you've ever wondered why it feels physically uncomfortable for some adults to ask for help, this is why. Their body remembers the childhood fear attached to that action. The nervous system reacts as if they are doing something dangerous, even if they logically know it should be safe now. Another painful truth is that many of these children were praised for their independence. Adults around them said things like, "You're so mature for your age. You never cause problems. You're so strong. You don't need anything, do you?" And the child absorbed the praise, not realizing it was building a cage. They learned to equate love with being self-reliant. They learned that the less they needed, the more they were valued. So they grew into adults who feel guilty for simply being human. By the time this child becomes an adult, the psychological blueprint is already set. When they struggle, they don't reach out. When life becomes heavy, they stay silent. When their heart breaks, they pretend they're fine. They become the person who looks strong on the outside but is quietly collapsing on the inside. They don't ask for help because their entire childhood taught them that needing someone is risky, shameful, or pointless. This is the root of their hidden pain. Not laziness, not pride, not weakness. Conditioning. What makes this wound so heavy is that most people never see it. These individuals often appear calm, composed, and capable. They've mastered emotional self-control, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. And when the world sees them as strong, it reinforces the childhood pattern. Keep everything inside. Handle it alone. But the truth is simple and heartbreaking. They never learned what it feels like to be supported. They only learned how to survive. Hyperindependence looks like strength from the outside, but inside it is a quiet and exhausting battle that most people will never see. People who struggle to ask for help don't wake up one day and choose to be strong or stoic. Their independence is not a personality trait. It's a psychological defense system built layer by layer from years of fear, disappointment, and emotional conditioning. What others interpret as confidence is often an armor they wear because the world taught them early on that vulnerability comes with consequences. To understand why asking for help feels impossible, you have to understand what is happening inside their nervous system. The moment they consider reaching out, their body reacts as if they're in danger. Their chest tightens, their stomach turns, their mind begins racing. Even a simple sentence like, "Can you help me?" feels heavy, embarrassing, or shameful. They rehearse the words in their head, then swallow them. And the worst part is that they don't always know why. They just feel this internal tension, this invisible barrier that rises up and shuts them down. This is the dark psychology behind hyperindependence. Their mind has learned to avoid the pain of disappointment by avoiding need altogether. A lot of these individuals carry what psychologists call emotional minimization. They constantly downplay their own struggles. When they are overwhelmed, they tell themselves it's not that bad. When they are hurting, they say others have it worse. When something traumatic happens, they convince themselves they should already be over it. They treat their pain like an inconvenience, something to ignore until it goes away. But pain that is ignored doesn't disappear. It sinks deeper, becoming heavier and harder to carry. Another part of this dark pattern is perfection pressure. Many hyper-independent people believe that if they can just do everything right, they won't need anyone. They set unrealistically high expectations for themselves. They push themselves to maintain control, keep everything together, and avoid mistakes. Deep down, the fear is this: if I fail, someone will see that I'm human. And if they see I'm human, they might judge me, abandon me, or lose respect for me. This perfectionism isn't about wanting to be the best. It's about trying to stay safe. On the outside, they look put together. On the inside, they're terrified of being perceived as weak or incompetent. Even simple tasks, like asking for clarity at work, admitting confusion, or requesting emotional support, feel like admissions of failure. The world praises independence, and these individuals cling to that praise because it feels like the only form of acceptance they've ever been allowed to receive. Then there's the emotional habit of invisible suffering. People who can't ask for help often become experts at hiding their pain. They smile when they are breaking. They say, "I'm fine," with rehearsed ease. They continue helping others while secretly drowning. They don't want to burden anyone, not because they think their pain is invalid, but because they were conditioned to believe that expressing needs harms relationships. So they bury everything. They grieve alone. They cry alone. They fall apart alone. Even in moments where they desperately want support, their mouth won't open. Their throat feels blocked. Their mind tells them it's safer to keep quiet. This silence becomes a lifestyle, a coping method that slowly turns into a prison. And yet, beneath all this independence lies a heartbreaking truth. They don't think they deserve help. Many of them grew up being the helper, the one others depended on. They learned to be the strong sibling, the mediator, the peacekeeper, the emotional container for the entire family. Their value became tied to how much weight they could carry. So in adulthood, they struggle to accept help because they believe it reverses the roles. They don't know how to be cared for. It feels unnatural, uncomfortable, even wrong. They may even feel guilty when someone tries to support them. Their brain immediately goes into a panic. I don't want to bother them. They're too busy. I should be able to handle this. It's selfish to ask. This guilt comes directly from childhood environments where their needs were minimized or ignored. Now, even when someone offers genuine support, the hyper-independent person feels undeserving. They push people away softly, subtly, almost automatically. They say, "It's okay. I've got it," even when they don't. And over time, this creates a dangerous cycle. They avoid asking for help. They carry everything alone. They become overwhelmed. They break silently. They get back up because no one knows. They repeat. From the outside, people may admire their strength, but inside, they feel fragile, tired, and emotionally underfed. The dark truth is that hyperindependence makes them appear invincible, which ironically makes others assume they don't need support. So they rarely receive the very thing they need most: care. The psychological cost of this coping mechanism is high. Their relationships often become unbalanced. They give more than they receive. They listen more than they speak. They comfort more than they're comforted. And this slowly builds resentment, not because they want more in return, but because a part of them whispers, "Why doesn't anyone notice that I'm hurting?" But the world cannot respond to pain it cannot see. The mask they learn to wear as children becomes the barrier that keeps them unseen as adults. And this is the tragedy of hyperindependence. The very thing that once protected them is now the thing that isolates them. They became their own emotional safe house, but now they are locked inside it. The hidden cost of never asking for help is not something that shows up all at once. It is slow. It is subtle. It builds over years. And by the time someone finally notices how tired they are, the exhaustion has already sunk deep into the bones. People who can't ask for help don't crumble dramatically. They erode quietly. The erosion begins with the simplest things, little moments when they tell themselves they can handle more, even when they're stretching past their limits. They take on work responsibilities they don't have time for. They offer emotional support to friends even when they're barely holding themselves together. They stay up late solving problems for others, but have no time to solve their own. They become the dependable one, the strong one, the whatever you need, I got you person. And while everyone sees them as stable, they slowly lose the sense of what it feels like to be cared for. One of the most painful consequences is emotional exhaustion. It's the kind of tiredness that sleep cannot fix. It's a weight in the chest, a heaviness in the eyes, a slow, dragging feeling in the mind. They wake up tired. They go to sleep tired. They carry stress, heartbreak, disappointment, and fear alone for so long that they forget what it felt like before the heaviness started. Their mind becomes a battlefield of quiet pain, but they smile through it because they were conditioned to hide every crack. Then comes the loneliness, the kind that creeps into their life silently. Loneliness doesn't always look like being alone. Sometimes it looks like being surrounded by people who have no idea what you're going through. It's laughing with friends while feeling disconnected. It's sitting next to someone you love, but feeling like there's a wall between you. It's craving emotional closeness, but not knowing how to reach out for it. They want connection, but they're terrified of revealing the depth of their pain. They feel invisible in rooms where everyone can see them physically, but no one sees them emotionally. This loneliness often leads to a quiet resentment that grows over time. Not because they are angry at others, but because they feel overlooked. They see themselves always showing up for others, being available, being supportive, being dependable, yet their own struggles seem unnoticed. They don't express these feelings out loud because they don't want to seem dramatic or needy. Instead, they carry the resentment inside, letting it build layer by layer until it becomes a heavy sadness. A sadness that whispers, "Why doesn't anyone check on me the way I check on them?" But the truth is heartbreaking. People cannot support what they cannot see, and these individuals learn to hide everything. Another devastating cost is being misunderstood. People who can't ask for help are often labeled as strong, independent, emotionally tough, or even cold. But these labels are illusions. They are survival strategies. Strength is not their identity, it is their armor. And armor is heavy. People assume they don't need help because they've never seen them ask for it. They assume everything is fine because they've never heard them complain. So these individuals become victims of their own silence. Their coping mechanism turns into their cage, trapping them in a life where no one knows how much they struggle. Their relationships also suffer. Hyper-independent people often form connections that feel one-sided. They become the emotional container, the listener, the caretaker. They offer empathy and understanding so easily, but when it comes to their own pain, they say nothing. They fear being a burden, so they never ask partners or friends for emotional support. Over time, this creates imbalance. The partner may feel shut out. Friends may feel distant or unneeded. And the hyper-independent person begins to wonder why relationships always feel lonely or incomplete. Another hidden cost is the damage done to their sense of self-worth. When you grow up believing that your needs are a problem, you unconsciously start to believe that you are a problem. So these individuals often measure their value by how useful they are. If they're helping others, they feel needed. If they're productive, they feel worthy. If they make life easier for everyone else, they feel like they have a purpose. But the moment they slow down, the moment they struggle, the moment they fail, they feel worthless. Their self-worth is built on doing, not being. This creates a dangerous inner dialogue. If I can't handle everything alone, I'm failing. If I need help, I'm weak. If I break down, I'll lose the people I care about. These beliefs trap them in an emotional loop that keeps them isolated and exhausted. And then there is the physical cost. The body keeps score, even when the mind tries to hide the pain. Chronic stress turns into muscle tension, headaches, digestive issues, fatigue, and sleep problems. The nervous system becomes stuck in a survival mode that never shuts off. They live in a constant state of alertness, always prepared for the next problem, the next responsibility, the next emotional battle. This takes a toll on their health over time, both mentally and physically. Yet perhaps the most heartbreaking cost of all is this. They don't know what it feels like to truly relax. They don't know what it feels like to rest without guilt. They don't know what it feels like to rely on someone and feel safe doing it. They have spent so many years being strong that the idea of someone holding them together feels foreign, almost threatening. This hidden pain doesn't make them weak. It makes them human. But they often don't realize that the weight they carry isn't normal. It's familiar, but it's not healthy. They've lived with emotional heaviness for so long that lightness feels uncomfortable. They've lived with silence for so long that speaking feels risky. They've lived alone in their struggles for so long that closeness feels dangerous. The real tragedy is that the world admires their strength while being blind to the suffering behind it. People see their composure, but not the loneliness. They see the independence, but not the exhaustion. They see the calmness, but not the pain. And in this way, the inability to ask for help becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. No one comes to help because no one knows they need it. But the truth is simple. They have been carrying too much for too long, and it is slowly breaking them from the inside out. Healing the inability to ask for help is not about suddenly becoming open, expressive, or emotionally dependent. It's about gently teaching the nervous system that vulnerability is no longer a threat. It's slow, it's uncomfortable, and at first, it feels wrong, almost like you're breaking a rule you didn't know you were still obeying. But this process is really about reprogramming the old wound that taught you that your needs were dangerous, annoying, or unwelcome. The first step in healing is acknowledging the truth. You were never weak for needing support. You were conditioned to believe your needs were unacceptable. Recognizing this is powerful because it separates who you are from what you learned. People who can't ask for help aren't flawed. They were trained, often by childhood or trauma, to survive without expecting care. And anytime you have been trained to survive something, undoing that training will feel strange at first. One of the most important parts of healing is learning to name your experiences honestly. People who struggle with vulnerability often minimize everything. They say things like, "I'm fine," "it's whatever," "I'll get over it," or "it's not important." But emotional healing starts by telling yourself the truth, even if it's just quietly in your own mind. I feel overwhelmed. I feel alone. I feel scared to ask for help. I feel like I don't matter when I struggle. Naming these feelings doesn't magically fix them, but it opens the door. It tells your mind, it is safe to admit this. And that simple shift is the beginning of learning to receive support. Then comes the next part, something every psychologist uses in therapy: gradual exposure. This means you don't jump from silence to pouring your heart out. You start incredibly small. You ask for tiny things that don't carry emotional weight. You ask a coworker to look over something. You ask a friend for a small favor. You ask someone to remind you of something. These gentle steps retrain the nervous system. They feel uncomfortable at first, but over time, they shrink the fear associated with needing anything from anyone. Hyper-independent people often think asking for help means handing over their entire emotional world. It doesn't. It can be as small as, "Can you help me with this quick thing?" Or, "Do you have a minute?" The goal is not the task itself. The goal is practicing the feeling of reaching out without collapsing into guilt or panic. Another crucial part of healing is setting boundaries around your emotional bandwidth. People who never ask for help almost always give too much. They say yes when they want to say no. They show up when they're exhausted. They take on responsibilities they don't have the energy for. This makes it impossible to receive support because they're always in giver mode. So part of healing is learning to say, "I can't right now," or "I'm not able to take that on." At first, they fear that boundaries will push people away. But in reality, boundaries create emotional space, space where receiving becomes possible, space where they can be human instead of being everyone's hero. Another layer of healing is surrounding yourself with people who respond with care instead of criticism. This is one of the hardest parts, because many hyper-independent adults unknowingly gravitate toward relationships where they are the caretaker. They choose friends or partners who are emotionally needy, chaotic, or unavailable because it feels familiar. It keeps the old dynamic alive. I help others, but no one helps me. Healing means choosing something unfamiliar, relationships where support goes both ways. People who ask, "How are you really?" People who notice when you're overwhelmed. People who don't disappear when you need something. At first, this kind of connection feels strange, even suspicious. You may doubt someone's intentions. You may feel uncomfortable when someone sees the tiredness in your eyes. But healthy relationships teach the nervous system that care is not a threat. It becomes a corrective emotional experience. And perhaps the most transformative step is allowing yourself to rest. People who never ask for help have built their identity on being the strong one. Rest feels unproductive. Rest feels guilty. Rest feels like they're letting someone down. But the truth is, rest is not an act of weakness. It is an act of reclaiming humanity. It is the moment you tell yourself, I deserve to slow down. I deserve to be okay. Healing also requires rewriting the stories you tell yourself. Many people who struggle with vulnerability live with a silent belief. If I break, everything will fall apart. But the reality is that letting yourself lean on others does not make you weak. It makes you connected. It makes you human. People are not meant to carry everything alone. Even the strongest minds eventually need support. Little by little, healing teaches you that you don't have to be the hero every day. Some days you can be tired. Some days you can be confused. Some days you can fall apart a little. The right people will not disappear when you do. The most powerful moment in this healing process is when you finally feel what you were missing all along. The relief of not holding everything inside. The relief of someone saying, I'm here. The relief of realizing the world doesn't collapse when you speak your truth. That moment, when you let someone in and the sky doesn't fall, is the moment your nervous system begins to rewrite the story completely, that it's the moment your childhood conditioning loses its grip, that it's the moment you realize you're allowed to be human. Healing doesn't turn you into someone dependent or fragile. It actually makes you stronger. Because real strength isn't carrying everything alone. Real strength is knowing you don't have to.